Welcome, everyone. My name is Dr. Allison Heaney, Vice President of Learning and Public Programs for the Museum of Latin American Art. We welcome you today, Wednesday, May 27th, 2026, to this edition of the MOLAA Zoom project, in conversation with Chilean artist Guillermo Bert and Latin American scholar Patrick Frank, moderated by our very own Chief Curator, Gabriela Urtiaga. MOLAA acknowledges the support of Bank of America for our newest exhibition, Techno-Empathy, and the Arts Council of Long Beach for their constant support of the educational programs at the Museum of Latin American Art. A little background about our very special guest today. Guillermo Bert, Los Angeles-based multimedia artist born in Santiago, Chile, draws on his bicultural experience to explore urbanism, consumerism, and displacement. His early 1990s bricolage transformed street posters from Los Angeles Skid Row into urban archaeology. Later, he incorporated barcodes into laser-cut artworks and paintings. A pivotal 2010 trip to Chile led to collaborations with Mapuche weavers, integrating QR codes into textiles that, when scanned, reveal films featuring indigenous stories. Expanding the project, Bert has worked with Navajo, Maya, Mixtec, and Zapotec weavers, creating 40 short films that connect viewers to indigenous artists. Beyond textiles, Bert's films offer a documentary glimpse into cultural narratives. Over 15 years, he has captured artists sharing their voices, often in indigenous languages, forming a mini-series of 40 films from several countries. His work spans weaving, laser sculptures, photography, and film. And his mid-career retrospective, The Journey, was held at the Nevada Museum of Art in 2023, accompanied by a book and catalog. Most recently, his work has been shown at the William Turner Gallery in Santa Monica, currently at the LACMA Museum of Art titled Grounded, along with the Rhode Island Museum of Art. In March, he'll have a featured show that started here at MOLAA. His Warrior series was later featured at Diverse Art LA and is in permanent collections all over, including Smithsonian Renwick Gallery, LACMA, and the Rhode Island Museum of Art. He has exhibited in too many places to name here, but including UCR, the Museum Art of Design. His work has been featured in LA Times, LA Weekly, and includes awards like the COLA Individual Grant Award, California Community Foundation Fellowship, and the National Association of Latino Art and Masters. We're so excited to welcome Guillermo Bert, along with, of course, Patrick Frank, our scholar here. Patrick Frank is responsible for 6 books on modern Latin American art, 3 of these specialized monographs, most recently Painting in a State of Exception, New Figuration in Argentina, 1960 to 1965, 2 translated collections of the artist's writing, most recently Manifestos and Polemics in Latin American Art. He's also co-authored with Jacqueline Barnidis the university textbook 20th Century Art of Latin America. He has an MA and PhD degrees at George Washington University in Washington, D.C. I am so excited to welcome both of you. And of course, Gabriela Urtiaga, welcome everyone to this new edition of Zoom Project.
Thank you,
Hello, everybody.
Alison.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Alison, and all the MOLAA team. Hello, Guillermo and Patrick. What a pleasure to have this opportunity to talk with you, to think together about the new show of Guillermo Bert here at MOLAA. And how can I say that it was an amazing journey that in all the preparation of the shows, working with all the MOLAA team and you, Guillermo, and Patrick, and we have the opportunity to share with our different audiences in the gallery, but also through different discussions, panel discussions, conversations about what does it mean this show in this particular moment, right? And that you, Patrick, say that it's important to figure out the implication through the high technology and empathy, right? And I would like to start with that reflection, and then we can put the focus in some different artworks that we are presenting here and continue talking about the different ideas behind techno-empathy, techno-empatia.
Okay, great. I'm glad to be here. I think that art and technology is one of the most important issues that artists today can take up because technology literally dominates our lives. We are using very advanced technology right now. and it impinges on many, many aspects of our lives. So it's very important for artists to engage with it for a number of reasons, because artists are using technology in ways for which it was not usually designed. Art, artists use technology in many ways. They basically, some of them just play with it. Some of them use it for social causes like Guillermo does, but in no case is it being used by artists for military, for surveillance, for business, for any of those purposes. So artists are showing us new ways to use technology so that we can free our minds from the other ways in which technology might impinge upon us. And what's unique about the way Guillermo uses technology, and I've written 2 books about art and technology as well, so I'm sort of up on this. What caught me about Guillermo's work is that he's using technology in the service of an empathetic social vision, and that is unusual.
That is incredible. And Guillermo, from your side, your work, I think, bridges technology, memory, and Latin American culture tradition, right? And how do you balance the digital innovation with ancestral storytelling in your artistic practice?
Well, thank you for having me here first. Pleasure for me. In terms of the technology, I think it's Patrick, what he's pointing it out with the empathy about technology is very relevant in my work. And, you know, he pointed it out really well. Actually, I didn't reflect so much in it. When I did the encoded textile series, that is the one that you can scan the code in the actual textiles and connect with the stories of indigenous communities. That was very pivotal for me in terms of this development, because you know, you talk about like an ancestral technique of weaving. You know, traditionally the indigenous used to weave and tell the stories through the weavings. And then now I incorporate this code that they weave as well, without understanding the technology behind the code, but just to weave it and make it scannable. And then that you can attach the story that you pre-record with their elderly or the poets or the medicine man to the code. And then you have this portal where the people can connect through their devices to the stories behind the textile, and that have that transition, and I think it's the ancient and the new connected in that manner. You know, it's sort of like oral tradition in the digital age. I think that is strike a nerve, and people get really fascinated and embedded. I mean, you know, they love it, particularly young people, that they kind of work more with the devices and all of that. It's kind of magical, the fact that these two technology, ancient and new, kind of coexist, and not in the modern society, but including, you know, traditional indigenous communities in other countries. So it's a very big gap that you're filling, and I think that that's kind of some of the beauty of technology that allow you to do things that they were not possible in the past.
Thank you, Guillermo. And we can see the Zapotec poet poem that you created in 2015, and we are the honor that is part of MOLAA collection, but also the Portal de Acoma #3. And tell us about the story behind these two fantastic textiles and the incorporation of the voices of different indigenous communities in your creation.
Yes, I traveled through Oaxaca, and I interview a lot of people, and we create like a tapestry of stories based on the tradition. And I ran into this poet. She's a major poet in Oaxaca, and she does this. She writes in Spanish and also in Zapotec, so both, and they sound completely different. And I try to every time that I do one of these pieces to have a segment that is written or spoken in the traditional language. So in this case, the Zapotec. And she does read the poetry in Zapotec, and it looked just amazing. So I thought this is very critical to save those things, because the archival of these stories is part of the whole idea. You know, it's not just to allow the people to see it, but these stories are disappearing, and we have to capture them and keep them there. So so that totally blew up my mind, because the rhythm of the music of the actual poetry and the language itself, that was kind of new to me. So that was very successful, and it's really a beautiful story how it's been told, because we dig into what it motivated for her to write poetry, and then what she write about it, and then also she teaches Zapotec to children, you know, so the tradition won't disappear. So it's a full spectrum of ideas, but we capture it and put it in this format, and then we have to deal with the actual weaving section of it, which these are the Navarro sisters, very famous weavers in Oaxaca. And they, so you see this piece actually have three vertical segments, the piece in the left, of course, and each one of them is just like 12 inches, because what they do is do backstrap loom. So they strap it in the back to the tree, and then they weave. So because they are kind of short people, they do just 12 inches at a time, you know, because it's been strapped from the back. So these are three different segments that we did to put together for this large textile. So the Navarro sisters are very well known, and the whole family weave. We went to their home, and they're the three sisters and the mother. Beautiful setup and gorgeous. We did a whole film about it. So it's a very interesting, I mean, we love to do this whole project, but the people can really kind of get the feeling of the Oaxaca and the tradition and the language all put together.
That is amazing. And Patrick, tell us the behind the scene about preparing this amazing show, that as a curator, how do you approach exhibiting artworks that combine technology with a deeply rooted with cultural narrative, right, and historical memory?
Well, I've been knowing Guillermo's work for, oh man, more than 10 years now, because I first saw a show of his in San Francisco in, God, what year was that, Guillermo? 2008? I don't know, something like that.
I'm not sure
I've
which
always
show is
been
that.
I've always been aware of his I've always been aware of his creativity. And then we went to his studio last summer, and we saw a panoply of his creativity from various periods. And I have two reactions at the time, because I had never been to his studio before. I had two reactions at the time. One reaction was, man, this guy is full of ideas. He has got 1,000 things going on, many different projects going in different directions. But it seemed to me that a common thread running through just about all of them was the idea of making visible things that we might otherwise overlook, giving visibility to what you might think of as marginalized or forgotten people or traditions. That seemed to me to be a tradition or a through line running through a great deal of his creativity. So it didn't take me long to find that idea for a theme for the show. And then, of course, through discussions with Guillermo, I began to learn more about the way he operates, and the way he actually gets on the ground with the people that he's working with. He's not just a distant observer. He's not just a scientific anthropologist. He's on the ground. I mean, he knows all the people that he pictures. He met the Zapotec weavers, and so he's connected to the people and the traditions that he's trying to bring fresh visibility to. So I thought that was kind of electrifying. Actually, that was thrilling for me to see that. So so it becomes a question of, well, how do you encapsulate the idea for a general visitor? how is a general person going to connect with this exhibition, with this strand of work that I found? And everybody can relate to the concept of technology. Oh my God, we are all using it all the time, and so techno has to be in there. And a lot of Guillermo's art is quite technological. But then the word empathy is actually a contested word today in society because there are folks running around out there get a lot of visibility who think that empathy is a design flaw in humans, who think that empathy is like not appropriate or counterproductive somehow. And so my goal is to counteract that view and show us that empathy is not only basic, but also necessary for our human survival as a species. So Guillermo, I mean, he's helping. He's got his shoulder to the wheel. He's using technology in new ways to present an absolutely necessary social vision. I mean, it doesn't get better than that.
That is amazing. And that empathy that you are describing here, Patrick, is real visible in the show. And Guillermo, one of the impactful present in the gallery is the constellation of the warriors that you create. And I would like to know more about these people that you create a strong connection, that you met them, you talk with them, and then you create this fantastic sculpture to pay tribute of the daily life that they are contributing of this in this country, right?
Yeah, this is my more recent project, and it's called, well, I mean, we did some pieces that were kind of more recent even. This is my larger body of work that's been done recently. So I was thinking about this, in architecture, you create this contour. You want to build a house in a hill, then you have to create a contour and then give you the terrain, how the terrain it works to put the house in there. So the architectural produce all this software that they allow you to create these structures and then slice it and create them to a certain very precise ratio. So I thought that would be amazing to create this kind of typography, but with people. And I thought that the layering process will add to the mix because the layers, like in the desert in Arizona, for example, that you see the sediment of the rocks and you can see the layers. And that kind of is an expression of time. Each layer is a certain amount of time that it passed by. So I thought these people that come with the time, with the culture, crossing the desert, will be very well represented in this technique. So I started using that software and that all these other additions to it. And so we start 3D scanning people and then allow a certain amount of space and create these layers. And then after that, we create a 3D model, we slice it digitally, and then we can get each one of the layers and we cut it with a laser. And then we stack them up together and we're going to put together 500 layers. They give you a life-size figure that is very similar to the real person. Very, very similar. It kind of capture the character of the person and then the nuances of their clothing and the hands and the face, all of that. So it has a lot of humanity in it. But there's an element that is very relevant, that the edges, because of the 1/8 of an inch increments of the layers, is jagged, and that jagged edges look like pixelation. So to me, they look like digital to a certain degree because they were originally going through this digital bath of 3D scanning and cutting and lasers. But then when you put it together, they kept that edge of the jagged edge and they give you a little motion. So they're human, they're with us, but they're sort of coming from this digital world as well. This combination in a sculpture, not in the digital work, but in a sculpture, like a three-dimensional 300-pound sculpture, is very attractive, very nuanced, and I was blown away the way that you can relate to the stories and how that element make it more kind of alive. If you were making completely realistic without any of the lines, it would be a little still. But in this case, they seems like to be emotion, in kind of in between them, two, emotion. Rodin used to do that precisely with a sculpture. They kind of contrive the motion in two different poses that doesn't supposed to go simultaneously, but with that he will manage to create like a non-static, but like in motion to the sculptures. So my technique is different, and they have this pixelation element to it, but I think that it has that kind of feeling of the people when I walk out of that platform and start walking around.
People.
And then just to in relation to the actual how I met these people, I traveled in this particular group that is all related to the farmland. So I went to Oxnard, and then the first time I went, actually it was raining, so I couldn't get anybody in the fields. But it was Eduardo, the one in the left, that is the a beekeeper. So I found him and I tracked it down and I started a conversation with him, and he was allowed to wear the suit, and we went to see the bees and 3D scan him. He was one of the first one of this group. And then went back again to Oxnard, and then it was a sunny day and there were people working in the fields. So I spent the day in the fields walking around and talking to people and talking to the people that managed the whole thing, and then allow me to scan them. I mean, or talk to them. I mean, of course, I asked him specifically they want to be part of the project. It was like 4 or 5 years ago. Today probably will be a little more conflicted, but so they all, Ricardo is the one in the left with the thing holding the thing up. Nayeli is the one in the middle, a very interesting lady, and then Veronica is the one in the right with the tomatoes. So so this group, we interview individually, we talk to them, we did the 3D scanning, and we keep in touch with some of them, not all of them, but Eduardo and Nayeli, we keep constantly in touch with them.
That is amazing, and people really love this installation, right?
Yes, I mean, and I most of the time when they're having my studio, I'm surrounded by them all day long. They are like companions. They're like so real.
One of the things that I think is interesting about the poses of these figures is that they are number one, they are in the middle of their work, and number two, they are not frozen in position. They're not obviously posing. They're sort of like, I call it poised. They're in the middle of something and they have a certain dynamic, but they're not exactly like in motion, and they're not exactly frozen in a pose like stop and say cheese. And that's an attractive moment to have captured. And I think it contributes to the allure of these works and the way people can relate to them.
Yeah, and I really love the different ideas that we can discover through this fantastic show. And of course, I think that the installation is really important. And at the same time, another moment of the show is that you select different pieces that are in relationship with themes of migration and identity. And I would like to know more from your perspectives. What kind of conversations do you hope this exhibition sparks, especially within the Latino community in California, but also around the world?
I mean, this is a relatively new series, and this particular, I mean, some of the other ones also deal with the idea of immigrant, but this particular series that is called Jacquard Punch Card, and so that was based on a trip that I was invited to talk in England, in the University of Leeds. Leeds is a city that used to be the capital of textile in Europe in the 17th century. And that's where they create these Jacquard punch cards that Mr. Jacquard created that. And then the punches on the card were binary code. and then the binary code were put it in the loom, and then the loom created a pattern, industrializing the entire process of weaving. That was a breakthrough, and it was a big time in the 17th century. But this card with the punch card and the binary code are the precursor to computing. It was the first card that it will carry this information and create a pattern and do this industrial thing afterward. So I think that this is the beginning of something that it happened 200 years later, but it's a really interesting the beginning, you know, when you capture the thing that it was in the beginning. So for me, these people that they are immigrants, they're describing something that happened for hundreds of years. It's from the beginning of the humanity, when the people had to leave their ground, their homes, and to go to new grounds because of, you know, lack of enough food or the climate or different situations. In today's day, you know, the people that are like this family, they're coming from Central America or the south of Mexico. They go just start walking, and then, you know, take the train or whatever is about there, but they just walk to the north. In the beginning was you know, the people that come from the fields to the cities, but now they're coming from the poor Central America or, you know, third world countries to the industrialized countries. That is more of the what's happened today in the world. But the actual immigration effect, or the immigration itself, is something that is as old as people are. And I try to capture it in this manner because the binary code in this case, when they perforate the skin of the people, it's sort of like it gives you the sense of they are being stigmatized, but beyond that, they're brought into a world of digital when they cross the border, and then they have their identity, you know, the humble identity, and then the digital identity, which deprive them from the rights to legality or some other documents or something. So that created a situation where it's out of the control. You know, they are already being gone through this digital veil when they cross through. So that's kind of my position. They're describing this called actually this piece called the Holy Family #2, and these are the Holy Family. You know, they're like my family, your family, anybody's family, but they're going through this process, this immigration process that is sometimes very harsh.
Yeah, and also, you know, in some of your pieces, you are presenting this situation, but also with a hope, right? That people continue looking for a better life, to try to do whatever they can do for their families, their loved one, and that kind of paintings and mixed media that you are creating in large canvases, and in these new technologies that you are describing, I think is so important. And this piece is one of the most powerful piece in the show that Patrick select for techno empathy, right, Patrick?
This piece, the image in it is pretty compelling because they are proceeding from left to right with a certain urgency and seriousness of purpose. And then calling it the Holy Family adds another whole level of poignancy, because if we think back to the Bible, Jesus Christ was a refugee. Jesus Christ was a displaced person. And so the Holy Family was displaced when it migrated to Egypt and back because of, I forget what reason, King Herod killing the children and all that other wonderful stuff. So disorder caused that migration. It's one of many causes of migration, and technology is another cause of migration, and that's what's alluded to in the Jacquard loom cards that Guillermo created as a backdrop for this work.
Yeah, and also the idea of surveillance, right? That they need to complete and to figure out where are exactly when they cross the borders. And yes, it's really powerful and really necessary to continue talking about these important issues. And Guillermo, you work with unexpected materials and technologies, and I would like to know how is your creative process when you are talking and presenting difficult themes, difficult topics, but also the intersection with the materials and technologies that you decide to use for these particular artworks.
Yeah, this is something that I don't know how it happened, but it happened gradually. And traditionally, the artists try to create like an image, and then so that people can identify them, and then they repeat that image in different forms through their life, you know. And then you say, well, this is a Picasso, this is a Miro, this is whoever. But my thinking is different. I just think about ideas, and then how I could represent those ideas in a better way, regardless of the style. So what kind of technologies, what kind of materials can I use to make this image more relevant? Because it's not just about the image itself, it's about the medium. You know, what kind of medium you use to represent that? And nowadays we have so many alternatives in terms of the media, you know, like with LED lights and all the transferring materials or images through different, you know, engraving processes with lasers and this and that. So you have this arsenal of work of materials or media that you can use. And then, well, you want to use them all to a certain degrees, but it has to make sense. So just as an example, I was doing this tumbleweeds. So I did this projection map in tumbleweeds, and then in the beginning I was creating this tumbleweed with pieces of plexi cut out with the shape of the branches of the tumbleweed, and then heat them up and then roll them out, and then creating this tumbleweed made of plastic essentially. And then they have a lot of gadgets, like if you approach it, it has an LED light and then start breathing. You know, so you approach the piece and the piece start breathing with blues, like lighter blues, darker blues, and it kind of create emotion. And then you approach it closely, they have a different dynamic of the lighting. So all of those things I was kind of interested in the developing, and I got some help with some people that are really serious people that work in this field of the LED lights, and it was great. It was good, but you know what? A lack of the connection with something more earthy, more real. You know, so I thought then I get an actual tumbleweed with immigrant interviews, and I projected over the tumbleweeds. That it was called tumble dreams, because the idea is that the tumbleweeds are like a nomadic element in the desert, floating with the wind. So that kind of resembled the idea of an immigrant. And then when you project the video interview of the person in the tumbleweed, which is called mapping projection, that kind of wrap up the image into the tumbleweed. The image itself is talking to you as the immigrant, and the form, the shape, and the texture itself of the tumbleweed is very real, and you can connect with it. So that's kind of have to do with the empathy, I guess, that Patrick is referring to, because the other one was kind of a little still. It was very alluring, and it was very colorful. The plexi tumbleweed, but this is the actual tumbleweed. So like it has a documentary element to it, something more real. And if I had to do the choice, I had to choose the one that looked more real. But it has the projection and all that technology, so it's the combination of both. You have to create a balance, and then every project you have to kind of figure out what would be the right balance to do the piece in this particular piece.
Yeah.
I think it's important. I think the color choices that Guillermo made is also important because this is not brightly colored. It is subdued. It's in browns and sepias. And a brightly colored picture would distract you, I think, from the urgency of the moment that we're witnessing here. So that was a useful choice, I think, that you made, Guillermo, in creating this image.
And you have to say something about the color. It's important. These images have been transferred to this surface. So I create these jacquard punch cards, and then I put layers of colors, flat, starting from the darker to the lighter. But the whole thing, entire thing is with a roller, dark brown, and then a little lighter brown, and then the little orangey, and then the lighter orangey, a little more yellow, and goes all the way to the top that is a solid, the lighter color there that is a little pinkish yellow. And then I burn the image with the laser into the surface, and whatever is darker in the image, it goes deeper in the eating the painting on the surface, and it get to the darker part. And then when it's the mid-tone of the image, it will go to the mid-tone of the layers. And then when it's a white, then that doesn't touch the surface. So you keep the color that is on the surface. So this image came from underneath, if you wish. So it wasn't painted. It was kind of reverse painted. It was painted in layer and then remove what you didn't have. So it's a very interesting process that I developed myself, but it worked really well. But it's a little tricky, of course. You have to have all these lasers and this and that, whatever. But it does work, and it's great because it's done in little segments. So essentially, you can crumble this piece in a little box and ship it out. And that is a major thing when you do exhibition abroad, that you don't have to send a giant piece, but you just crumble down and put it in a little box. So all of these things works. You have to kind of figure out a way to do it.
Yeah.
The use of dozens of layers of paint, Guillermo, reminds me of the life-size figures, the warriors, because they too are made of dozens of layers that you might not notice standing at a distance, but there is a lot of work and thought and technology that goes into it, and it creates a
you're right.
result here that is it's quite compelling, I think.
Yeah, and the people kind of approach the thing and they don't know whether they're painted, they're airbrushed, they're printed, and that kind of that's not obvious. The way you're being built is kind of relevant because kind of entice the interest or the curiosity of the people to really think what we're seeing here. Same with the warriors. You don't know if they're 3D printed. People believe they're 3D printed, but how can they're in wood? So they don't know, and then they ask. But just to give a little bit extra to the viewer, something that they haven't seen before, essentially.
So it's important, I think, to bring this material forward because the pictures themselves are very compelling. The statues, the warriors are very compelling just in themselves. And this image is very compelling. But to know the background to it and all the thought and process that went into it is very helpful. And I'm glad we're doing this.
Yeah, it's amazing. And another important intervention that Guillermo did in the middle of the gallery, right, is the bus stop that you create for this show. And we can see an important figure, the Virgen de Guadalupe there. And tell us the story behind this particular installation, Guillermo.
I think this probably is a work in process to a certain degree because these series are moving forward in another direction. But I thought that it will be I think it's called the Guadalupe's
Safe house.
Yeah, safe house, because the warriors, which are the first line workers, sometimes they goes at 5 in the morning to wait for the bus and to go to the next job, which is 2 hours away in the bus. And so this is a safe house for them, but at the same time, the Virgin of Guadalupe is protecting them while they're waiting there for the bus. And in the other side, actually, of the Guadalupe, which is the advertisement section of this little bus stop, is a mirror that has the words the American Dream, and you see yourself in there. You see the mirror, and you see the typography, feel the space. So it's something like it's sort of like a movie, like, oh my God, this is the American Dream, and then you are part of it. You are an actor in that movie. But these are the workers. These are the people that work every day, sometimes 12 hours a day, and they are not really appreciated the way they should be, because nobody goes at 5 in the morning to see how they are sitting down in this shelter to go to work. So they're a little bit invisible, and that invisibility is what gave me to the warriors, because the warrior was based on the idea of the terracotta warriors of China, and the idea that these warriors were buried for 5,000 years until they were unearthed and taken out, and then people realized there's a whole army there. I wanted to extrapolate that and get as a reference that the first line workers, they are not being seen, the gardeners, the people that work in the fields, the people that are not really conscious of their existence until the COVID hit, and then the people realize somebody has to bring me the food, or somebody has to keep on working in the street or in the lighting, or the gardener, or somebody, some people have to physically go there and do the work, and that is where the warriors came about. So they're sort of like a mythical in a sense, they're like millions of people they're coming every day, and then they do all of these things for the city, and then they goes away. And the people doesn't realize that, and they don't give it the value that they deserve. So the warriors is a way of honoring this group of people, these immigrant people.
And then it seems to me that that's part of a trend we're seeing now in contemporary art, to render more visible those who are forgotten or marginalized. And some artists who are in the MOLAA collection, like J. Lynn Gomez and Narciso Martinez, are also having that same cause of rendering visible what we might otherwise overlook. But Guillermo's way of doing it is very up to date, very of the moment, and very powerful, I think. And then another point about the bus stop is specifically relating to Los Angeles. In LA, white collar workers don't use the bus to commute nearly as much as they do in other cities, like Seattle, like Washington, D.C., like London. White collar workers and tourists and everybody uses public transport. But in LA, it's predominantly a working class, blue collar method of transportation. So that's another way in which Guillermo helps to elevate the world and life concerns of those marginalized folks.
Yeah, and I am really happy that through the different shows that we present here in this moment, right, in conversation with Guillermo, but also the creation of Mercedes Gertz, a Mexican artist, and Antonio Romero from El Salvador. The three artists are presenting, of course, with different geographical and geopolitical perspectives, important topics that through the art they are presenting in different ways a philosophical statement, right? And I am really happy, and I can see every time that I visit the galleries and I start the conversation with you and the different visitors, the impact and the most important, the questions that these kind of artists are presenting through these fantastic narratives and cultural narratives. And from your perspective, Patrick, that you have worked with different Latin American artists and Latinos, Chicanos artists, how do you see Guillermo work contributing to broader conversations?
Well, there's this bias about Latin American art that it's not very technologically advanced.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the Latin American art still has an uphill battle to be recognized. There's been a lot of progress made since I've been active as a scholar in the advancement of the and acknowledgement and canonization, frankly, of modern Latin American art. That progress is ongoing, but one area where the progress is still lagging is Latin American artists who use high technology. And we had a show here at MOLAA Arteonica, which is going to stand, in my view, as a major landmark in that quest to help to equalize the scales of recognition for Latin American artists who use high technology. And so I view this show as a continuation of that particular cause to continue to elevate and bring to view these important voices that happen to be using high technology. So this is why it's very important at this moment to have this show.
Yeah, and that is true, and is important to continue to talk about. And well, time really flies. And Guillermo, do you like to present your video in relationship with the warriors and the upcoming project that you are working on?
Yes. So this is the Warriors in Action. This project is going to be calling the Warriors a Journey, and they're going to start traveling to the communities that actually represent in Ventura County, Fresno, all of that areas, and East Los Angeles, and also some areas in Long Beach and East LA. So the idea is that the museum doesn't really allow a lot of the people to access to them, because the location, geographical location. So the people that they are in Fresno, they don't have really a lot of options, or in Oxnard. So the Warriors, the track actually going to be built, and they're going to be self-contained. So the entire exhibition is going to be on the road. And then when you get to the place, we have this stage coming down the stairs, and then the people will come down and the people can see it. And it will be part of the other events on the region. So we are coordinating with the MOLAA and the Channel Island colleges in that area. And some of the people in another place called Land and Sky that has an artist in residence in our region, they're going to connect it with the different events in the area. And then we're going to start rolling in September after this show is over in MOLAA. We already have the money to buy the track, and then we customize it and we put it together and we start traveling. So we are creating an itinerary for the track and inserted in the school district and all the other libraries and this and that, but also in areas that they don't have anything culturally, and then we can just put it in somewhere in the city so that people can gather and see it. So that's a way to actually make it more accessible to the people that really can see themselves in the track. So that's kind of more like a more democratic way to present culture in a certain way. So we're trying to do that, and that's kind of the next stage for these warriors.
Amazing. Sounds like a real good plan, and we are happy to continue collaborating with you. And well, Patrick and Guillermo, thank you so much for sharing with us your knowledge, your experience and passion, and to be part of MOLAA through this fantastic show that we invite all of you to visit as soon as possible to enjoy the different exhibitions that we are presenting here, and especially for sure techno empathy.
Thank
Excellent.
you.
Thank you very much for having me.
On behalf of MOLAA, we want to thank you so much for joining us for this very special episode of Zoom Project. Thank you so much to Gabriela Urtiaga for your engaging questions. Of course, thank you to Guillermo Bert and Patrick Frank. We're so excited to have this exhibit. For the rest of you, it is open until the end of July, so we hope you come by, check out MOLAA and see this. We look forward to seeing you at our next chapter of MOLAA Zoom Project. Thank you so much.